People Entertainment, I'm Rachel Smith. Well, Late Show host Stephen Colbert is taking a break after rupturing his appendix. Colbert is now recovering after surgery and has canceled a week's worth of shows. But he appears to be in good spirits, joking that all emails to his appendix will now be handled by his pancreas. Colbert did miss some shows last month after he tested positive for COVID. Well, Dolly Parton's new album, Rockstar, is #1 on Billboard's album sales chart. And can you believe it? It's the first time the music icon has topped that chart in its 32-year history. Parton, of course, has been a hitmaker far longer than that. Rockstar is also #3 on the Billboard 200. It's her highest-ranking album ever. Now, the album is the superstar's entry into the rock and roll world, with artists like Steven Tyler, Sheryl Crow, and Sir Paul McCartney featured on the record. Well, in other music news today, Jennifer Lopez is giving fans her first solo album in 10 years. Now, J-Lo is releasing the album called This Is Me Now, and it will drop on February 16th. The first single, Can't Get Enough, will be out January 10th. Lopez says the album will focus on her tough childhood, unsuccessful relationships, and the emotional journey she's experienced. It will also include a track titled Dear Ben Part 2, a throwback to her 2002 song Dear Ben, about, of course, her now husband, Ben Affleck. Lopez will release a movie version on Prime Video the same day the album drops. And get excited, Swifties! You can watch the Eras Tour at home very soon. Taylor Swift's concert film will be available on streaming services on her birthday, December 13th. The film is also an extended version of what fans saw in theaters. Well, there is a new film being called A Refreshing Look at Masculinity and How Society Defines It. It's called It Is In All of Us, and it's the directorial debut for actor Antonia Campbell-Hughes. And the Advocate Channel's Tracy E. Gilchrist spoke with Campbell-Hughes about the film's themes.
Congratulations on It Is In Us All, and also on the acclaim that it's gotten. And, thank you for being here. So I do want to begin by asking you a little bit of a general question for folks who are not familiar with the film. Would you share a bit of the impetus for this story?
Well, basically, it was presented to me as like a fund that you, as you know, as starting out filmmakers, you apply for, and it was specifically a women's fund, which I thought was interesting. So I immediately thought, I'm going to make a film with only men. Because, again, I was really interested in how we perceive gender and the kind of, the specificity with that. And, people always talk about certain men being in touch with their female or, their feminine side. I was like, why do we have these kind of binary constraints? And so there's something I'd always been very curious about and wanted to contest. And then, there was my own personal journey, which was about reconnecting with the land and the heritage of where I come from, my mother's birthplace. And I wanted specifically to look at male versus masculine. And, I spend a lot of time in capital cities like London, New York, where you see men who strive to have it all and be everything that they can possibly be, a version of perfection, versus a very kind of pure version of male, which I saw within these kind of young boys that were living in the countryside in Ireland. So I want, basically it was about merging these two versions of male and masculine. And if you thrust them together in a kind of explosive, traumatic event, what comes by that? So.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for that. And I do want to talk a little bit about the explosive event, which is literally a collision, a car crash that brings these two men, Hamish and Evan, together. And they're very different sorts of people. Would you talk about the idea of exploring that kind of almost molecular change that occurs in someone when they have endured a trauma?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it is. It's kind of like, in the face of extremes, we are at our most raw. And, what specifically, I'm looking at the character of Hamish, which is Cosmo Jarvis. It's that it's someone who's so restrained and so held that he literally, this traumatic event, which is a car crash, it like breaks him open, and it allows him the capacity to live and observe and to infuse and be infused by the young boy who's in the collision with him. And it is when things like that happen, and that shared experience. I love the way that you say molecular, because it is that, and I always compare this film to science fiction, because it's where you allow yourself the kind of you open yourself up to receive things more organically. And a lot of people asked me initially, where was it a sexual relationship? Is it erotic? And I said, yeah, it's all of the above. It's sensual, and it is without. People get so upset by when things don't have specific labels, and that's what I wanted to look at. It is when it's something that is so pure and so raw, and that is so full of vitality and love, and it's also quite terrifying when things don't have, when they aren't partitioned into various categories.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that these characters, given what they've been through, kind of transcend their age, their gender, their sexual identity. So I feel like that came through really well, actually. Would you talk a bit about part of Hamish's journey is his kind of, he's been brought to his past at his aunt's house, or the past he didn't really know. And he's kind of in search of his mother in some way. Would you talk about these kinds of ghosts of one's family or past and how that shows up in the film?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like what the land does is it buys him time, and it gives him it was almost, it's almost like it's a timeout period to actually discover his own core bodily self. And it is very much, the way I wrote it was that his mother, who is deceased, is the land, kind of. It is, it's coming back to the mothership per se. But it's what she represents, and it's what his foundation is. And this boy that he meets is also a part of that. So they're all kind of intertwined, and it is something that, like, I see Hamish is actually going back to his child self. And when we were filming, I kept saying to Cosmo, I wanted him to perform every experience as though it was the first. It is like an alien being coming onto Earth for the first time. It is the first experience, and with that wonder, and and that's specifically what that is. And that's what people crave when they, even as adults, crave their parent.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought of it, but when you said that you thought about this film as science fiction and then just spoke about that, I'm reminded of the primal scene in science fiction, which is like the the birth of the alien and the mother, and that's incredible. So, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about, if you wouldn't mind, the land as, I don't know if it's a character or these beautiful wide shots of just land with movement in the distance. And it's just really stunning. Would you talk about how you conceived of the look of this film?
Yeah, sure. Actually, no actor wants to hear it, but I always said that the landscape is the leading character, because, but very much so, because so I was born there as a very young, obviously as an infant, but we left when I was like 2 and moved to Switzerland. And then when I only started getting to know this place in Donegal, I guess in my like early 20s, and I would do that journey that the protagonist does, and I'd fly into an airport and do this drive that's like 2 hours, and it is like, it's like coming over the precipice into this completely alien landscape that is so vast and so unfamiliar, and not really what we associate with Ireland, as you know.
Well, thanks so much for being with us for Equal Entertainment. You can watch us live by downloading our app on the Apple or Google Play Store, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. For the Advocate channel today, I'm Rachel Smith. Take care.